Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 5 of What If Deku Had Green Lightning. If you guys enjoyed this what if, and want to see part 6 of it, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. The day for the internships had finally come around. Additionally, Izuku was informed that Aizawa-sensei would be visiting the Bakugo household over the weekend for dorm negotiation. So that was finally being dealt with, and Izuku had brought his pack of clothing along with his hero costume, and Aizawa-sensei instructed for the students to take decent care of their costumes, or there would be hell to pay later. And was standing at the station waiting for the train that would take him closest to Hawk's hero agency, along with Tokoyami. But before he did that, he needed to go talk to Iida. Iida. Wait up. Izuku called out, "Uraraka not too far behind." "Ah, Izuku, Uraraka," he replied, a distant look in his eyes. This really worried Izuku. In the short time he had known Iida, the boy had always been fully present and aware, completely in the moment, especially in the boy's more outspoken and lawful good moments. "To what do I owe the company?" "Are you okay, Iida?" Izuku said plainly. Okay, maybe not the most tactful approach, but the extreme formality which Iida only spoke to strangers with startled him slightly. "I'm fine," Iida replied, not looking either of his friends in their eyes. "Are you sure, Iida? You've been more and more distant over these past few days." Uraraka trailed off, turning to Izuku for support. But the green-haired boy could provide little, as a series of thoughts suddenly connected in his mind, a mental light bulb. "Iida, you're going after Stain, aren't you?" Izuku said, rather untactfully. Iida's response was even more worrying, lowering his head and speaking sharply. "No. Iida." Izuku trailed off, gathering his thoughts before continuing, "You're angry, aren't you?" There was no response from the boy with dark blue hair, so Izuku kept talking. "You won vengeance for your brother, right?" Beside Izuku, a gasp from Uraraka could be heard as she suddenly understood, but she did not cut Izuku off as he continued again. "I understand you want that, but channeling your anger to do so is not the right way. Have you watched Star Wars?" Izuku doubted the boy had. Something he had discovered in his previous school was that very few people shared his fascination for the pre-quirk era, and most pretended it just didn't exist, many of his teachers before UA included. "Star Wars?" Iida questioned, incredibly confused by where this was going. "Doesn't matter. Point is, there's a quote from the movie that I think could help you. Anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Iida, if you ever need to talk to someone, we're here for you, okay?" Izuku finished with his stutter returning after the end of his little speech, and Uraraka nodding furiously by his side. In response, Iida sighed and fixed his glasses. His face was visibly clear, but not by much. "Thank you, both of you. But I will be fine. Good luck at your internships," he said, before turning away. Izuku sighed in worry, and after bidding farewell to Uraraka and one last farewell to his brother, in which he showed him one of the posts about interning with Best Jeanist, to which Bakugo began twitching and looking like he wanted to break something more than usual, he headed towards his train. With Tokoyami, the two of them exchanged pleasantries, and began discussion on a variety of topics, and Izuku was a little off-put by the abundance of edgy and moody replies, but by the end of the train ride he began to find it charismatic, and undeniably fitting of Tokoyami's presentation, quirk and hero name. I mean, he'll have his niche as a hero, Izuku thought as the two collected their bags and headed towards the city, where Hawk's hero agency was located. Bakugo was twitching. A lot. Like, the unhealthy amount. He was already prepared to scream, after watching the short clip Izuku had showed him, and after browsing various hero forums, he understood why his brother had kept chuckling at his choice of internship. He knocked, mildly violently, on the front door of Best Jeanist's hero agency, where he was promptly let in by one of Best Jeanist's many stylish sidekicks. "Stylish my ass, that looks impossible to fight in," Bakugo thought as he examined the sidekick, rambling about some shit about how honored Bakugo should feel for being taken on as an intern by Best Jeanist. He'd scared as they made their way into the elevator, for an impossibly long ride where he had to deal with the sidekick's impossibly irritating rants about fashion, and he was about to snap at them to shut the fuck up when the elevator dinged, signaling freedom. Surely fucking Best Jeanist can be as stuck up as this swerve. Bakugo would never admit to anyone how truly wrong he was at that moment. Best Jeanist proceeded to ramble for a full fucking half hour, as he was combing Bakugo's hair for some fucking reason, as he explained some shit about being presentable. After what felt like an eternity, Best Jeanist told Bakugo that they would be going out on patrol. Bakugo smirked, "Hell yes. I can go beat up some criminals," he thought as he changed into his hero costume, meeting with Best Jeanist at the entrance to the building. The pro-hero nodded at Bakugo, as the two headed onto the streets of the town. Bakugo was not 5 minutes down the street with Best Jeanist when he began twitching uncontrollably. Best Jeanist had thus far explained nothing about combat or fighting villains, and had opted to focus on public relations, with examples as he intermittently flirted with women they passed. Eventually they came up to a group of children, who stopped to stare in awe at the passing hero and heroine training. Now, go show me what you've learned so far, and what you already know. Best Jeanist said to Bakugo, gesturing to the children. Bakugo walked up to them, and leaned down with a bloodshot look. Hey you little punks, he started. You're the kid who came first in the sports festival. One of the kids cut him off. Yeah, that's right. You were so cool and strong. Another followed up. It was Amma. Shut up you little twerps and listen to me. He cut him off, twitching more as they brought up his victory. I'm gonna become the best hero the world has seen. So you better remember my damn name. Ground Zero. Once Bakugo finished, the kids were in tears and began backing away before running. Weak little fuckers, Bakugo sighed as he returned to Best Jeanist who had his face in a hand. How about we finish this patrol, head back to the agency and do some other work for now? Best Jeanist suggested. Sounds good, as long as we get to beat someone up by the end of the patrol. Bakugo replied, punching his fists together. Probably not. Well, why the fuck am I still here? You are here to learn. Best Jeanist replied, using fibers from the edge of his hero costume to restrain Bakugo. You are not here to fight, but to gain experience in all aspects of being a hero. Fighting is part of being a hero. Yes, but that doesn't make it the most important part. There's more than one way to be a hero, such as interacting with the general public. They will not accept you as a hero if you cannot interact with them. Think of the intimidation Endeavor is known for. Bakugo shivered slightly at that last comment. Both he and Izuku loathed Endeavor, more so after Izuku explained what Todoroki had told him on the day of the sports festival. Bakugo sighed, and relented. Fine. Best Jeanist smirked, and turned to continue the, well then, welcome to your internship. I hope to shape you to a hero of the future that can meet your aspirations. Izuku and Tokoyami were let in by one of Hulk's sidekicks, and were promptly greeted by a very modern interior lobby, where they were directed by a receptionist to place their hero costumes in their designated lockers, before taking an elevator to the top floor. Hawks will meet you in his office. It's on the top floor, but shouldn't be too hard to miss. The receptionist told them. Thank you. Izuku replied, as he and Tokoyami went towards the elevator. Izuku was incredibly jittery on the way up. How should I address him? What will he be like? What will we learn? Are we? Izuku's thoughts were broken by the dinging of the elevator, and a tap on the shoulder from Tokoyami. Izuku nervously thanked the boy as the two made their way into the office. Once they opened the door, they were greeted by a massive window spanning from the floor to the ceiling. Looking around the room there were bits and pieces of Endeavor merch, albeit not much, and on the ceiling there was a large trapdoor with a spiral staircase leading towards it. Directly in front of them was a large desk with several monitors. Poking out over the top of them were the tips of two large red wings. Hawks? Izuku questioned. Yep, that'd be me. How can I help you? Hawks replied, flying over the top of the monitors and landing in front of them. We would be the interns from UA. Tokoyami replied. Oh yeah, I remember sending for you too. Hawks told them, Izuku and Tokoyami, right? Yes, that would be us Hawks see. Izuku started before being cut off. Please, just call me Hawks. I'm not that old yet, am I? Right? I was wondering what we would be doing here. Well, first things first, I'll take you two on a patrol as I want to see your current skills. I take it you both have some idea of my style, yes? Yes. Extreme speed, mobility and an incredible ability to multitask. Tokoyami replied, but what does that have to do with us? Well, Hawk said, putting on his hero jacket and grabbing his helmet. Tokoyami. Your quirk gives you a bird head, so I'm wondering if we can force that to develop you wings or at least develop Dark Shadow further to give mutations. As you seem to need greater mobility during the sports festival. And Izuku, your quirk gives you lightning. It goes at the speed of light. Yet you don't. But also, I think you could learn to multitask better, especially considering the way your quirk works. Now come on, suit up, meet me in the front lobby in 5 minutes, or you'll have to catch up. Yes, Hawks. Izuku and Tokoyami stood in their full hero gear, waiting in the lobby for Hawks, when they saw a few of his feathers coming towards them. Each of them did their best to dodge the respective feathers, Izuku faring a little better than Tokoyami, but after about a minute, both were struck down. You lasted longer than I expected, good job. Hawks said, strolling out of the elevator as the feathers returned to his wings. Now, let's get going, shall we? Hawks led the two UA students out of the building, and down the street. So first thing to understand, is that being a hero is not all about fighting the big dudes. You'll spend a lot more time on the little guys, doing investigations or just helping around the community. As Hawk said that last part, he gestured towards one of his feathers as he sent it off. The two UA students watched in awe as it seamlessly helped an elderly woman with her groceries, before finding its way back to its spot in Hawk's left wing. Almost as soon as that was done, he began talking into an earpiece as the boys could hear someone talking on the other end. Alright, I'll head there now. Hawk said, before turning to the two UA students. Alright, so, there's a small bank heist happening a couple blocks over. You have permission to use your quirks, to either save your life, or someone else's, but to be able to keep up with me. That is your current challenge. Godspeed, boys. Hawks finished, flapping his wings and heading in the direction. Izuku powered himself up and started doing his best to keep up with the speed of Hawks, whilst Tokoyami was trying to manipulate Dark Shadow to assist in his venture. By the time Izuku had arrived, the fight was half finished, so he pulled out a notebook. Yes, he kept a spot for those in his costume, and began taking notes on all the small instances of multitasking done by Hawks. Dragging out those already knocked out using his feathers, removing rubble off of those trapped and fighting villains that were not yet knocked out. After a couple minutes, Izuku started helping those freed from the rubble to the ambulance, and helping the police with restraining the villains as Tokoyami showed up to help with both. Tokoyami had used Dark Shadow to enhance his own physical abilities, almost like an overlay of sorts, as he assisted with the restraining of the villains, whilst Izuku focused on assisting civilians caught up in the crossfire, or those who were initially inside the bank at the time of the attack. And almost as soon as it had started, it was over. Hawks casually strolled over to the two UA students, and praised them both for their good instincts, once they had arrived to work with law enforcement, and prioritizing lives within their capacities. Well, that's it for today's patrol. We'll head back to the agency and work on improving your speed. But first, let's get something to eat cause I'm kinda hungry. Bakugo was completely beat. In many ways. On one hand, he was completely and utterly mentally drained after listening to an hour-long lecture from Best Jeanist about presentation. However, it was only the presentation of his hair. He dreaded to hear what the pro hero had to say about the rest of his appearance, let alone his personality. Additionally, Bakugo needed to have his hair changed by one of Best Jeanist's sidekicks, thus making his hair completely beat, and he wouldn't dare look in the mirror for a long time to come, especially considering the sheer amount of gel that was somehow being absorbed by his hair. And then, once Best Jeanist finished talking and realized Bakugo hadn't listened to a single word of his lecture, he then invited Bakugo for a no-holds-barred one-on-one training spar. Bakugo, unsurprisingly, accepted with a fuck yeah. To which he was whacked on the head for his use of explicit language, and the two of them headed to the agency's gym. It was small, but there was a small dedicated sparring ring that would serve their purposes. And he proceeded to get his ass completely beat into the ground, with his pride not so far from it. His pride soon followed after he was utterly defeated for a fourth time. So, will you listen and learn now? Best Jeanist asked sternly, standing completely untouched. The two had just completed several sparring bouts, all involving some variation of the same thing. Bakugo trying something, only to get his ass kicked. Initially, Bakugo went in with an explosion-propelled right hook, which was caught at the last moment by Best Jeanist, who quickly spun Bakugo round before the UA student could react, and thus he flew out of the ring. Similarly, when Bakugo tried flying over Best Jeanist, the pro hero dashed forward, grabbing Bakugo by his feet, and slamming him down and out of the ring. His third attempt involved trying to attack from a range, but before he could even align his hands to aim for an explosion, Best Jeanist had caught on and ran forward, pushing Bakugo's arms away, and simply shoving them out of the ring. The fourth and final attempt, Bakugo simply tried to propel himself directly at Best Jeanist, with explosions from his feet and back pushing him forward. Only to be met with a harsh kick to the side of his head, and a punch straight into his gut, firmly flinging Bakugo out of the ring, curled over in pain. And so they were at this point, Bakugo humiliated by the pro hero who had not once used his quirk during their bouts. Stifling a cough and swallowing the iron tang of blood, Bakugo stood up and glared at the pro hero before him. This is the strength of a pro. Raw power and incredible technique from years of battle after fucking battle. An incredibly deep chasm to cross to stand and fight alongside, let alone against. This is the shit I came here to do. I'll listen to your fucking lectures if you actually teach me how to fight. Bakugo replied. Very well. That is probably the best outcome we can get out of you anyway. Come along then, and I'll teach you how to throw a proper punch. Best Jeanist replied, walking over to some of the bags. I fucking know ho. Any punk can throw a punch. The good ones can throw a proper punch, honed by training and discipline. Whilst you know how to punch, you still have a long way to go before you can punch strong. Think All Might just tosses his fists around. Fucking fine, I'll let you teach me how to punch. Better. Good enough. And so Bakugo's internship of hell started. Best Jeanist explained that whilst Bakugo had a good instinct for combat, it was only that instinct. You will become stronger by not becoming physically stronger, but by learning to fight better. An equal split of fighting with better technique, and fighting smarter. Best Jeanist told him as they approached some training dummies, despite Best Jeanist's insistence that his sidekicks should not be referred to as training dummies, just because they would help teach Bakugo to fight. Bakugo refused to cease. Whilst Bakugo was training with Best Jeanist, Izuku was training with Hawks and Tokoyami. Hawks was trying to get Tokoyami to develop wings, and once that proved to be fruitless, he started with Tokoyami to change Dark Shadow's form to some extent. to make it so that dark shadow could fly and drag Tokoyami with him. At the same time, he had sent several of his feathers for Izuku to keep dodging. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pick out a discernible pattern, so he just stuck to reacting the moment he noticed movement from one of the feathers. Thanks to his quirk, he could do this within a matter of moments, but it was still not fast enough as the feathers were fast, and Izuku needed to watch for the slightest change in trajectory. His current problem came as he could not watch every direction, and was only barely fast enough to dodge if he noticed the feather the moment it moved. Thankfully so far Hawks had only sent attacks that were in front of Izuku, but he knew that would change soon, as Hawks was ramping up the training for Tokoyami. Suddenly, a large movement of black abyss caught Izuku's eye as Tokoyami's dark shadow began dragging him upwards. In that split moment Izuku was watching that, a feather had struck him. Midori Raiko. Keep focus. I'll come over and give you a hand in a moment, I'll just make sure Tokoyami can land without breaking anything first. Hawks called out. Wait, was he able to sense he struck me just through the feather? That's pretty impressive, the true power of a pro I suppose. Having developed his quirk as much as possible, and probably still pushing himself harder to do better. I wonder if. Thanks for the compliment, but you should probably watch those feathers. Izuku's eyes widened as several of the feathers charged at once. He was barely able to dodge the first, and he could feel the second, but the third grazed his elbow. My reaction time is definitely getting better, but I don't know about my technique for dodging and movement, both could be made more efficient. Izuku was in his thoughts as he carefully watched the remaining feathers in front of him. He was startled when they all flew away, as his gaze followed where they went, back to their host. So, what were your last thoughts just then? It looked like you figured something out. Hawks said as he casually ignored Tokoyami's scolding dark shadow. The latter had started flying up without warning, dragging Tokoyami along, much to the bird-headed boy's dismay. Ah. Well, my reaction time is pretty good, and speed is alright, but I need to improve my dodging technique. Izuku stuttered out, surprised by Hawk's sudden appearance. Well, your reaction time is definitely pretty good, even amongst pros, and whilst your speed is a touch faster than most, your technique is almost definitely lacking without proper training or practice. We'll work on speed tomorrow perhaps, but let's look at your technique. Dodge these for me. And with no more warning than that, Hawk sent a dozen feathers in Izuku's direction. This is way more than I am used to. The only difference is that each of these aren't coming at the same time. I don't need to dodge them simultaneously. If I focus on the immediate two, I can dodge the sooner one and plan for the next, and repeat that for the rest. Izuku quickly took up a stance and powered himself with his quirk, aiming down the first two feathers. Swiftly moving his right arm to dodge the first and then making sure that was out of the way whilst he twisted his torso to dodge the second. A third was coming for his left arm, so he raised back as he started leaning backwards to dodge the fourth before shooting back up dodging the fifth. This unfortunately sent him straight into the path of the sixth, so that struck his hip. You would not believe just how sharp Hawk's feather points are, but Izuku ignored the pain for now, opting to overload the receptors in the region with his lightning, as to numb the pain. The seventh was easily dodged by a movement from his left hand, and the eighth from a short jump. The ninth, however, came up high at him, and he was barely able to duck under it, with it pulling a piece of hair away from his head. That hurt. The 10th was going in the same direction as the 11th, so Izuku focused on the 12th, whilst moving out of the way of the two prior. This one went where he had just moved to, so he had to wait until the moment the 11th had finished, so he could move back. Despite the intensity of the situation, it took but several seconds. I'm impressed, kid, that's pretty good for someone who's had no actual training, rather forced immersion. Alright, let's look at your technique. Hawk said, mimicking Izuku's stance. First, if your stance is to be purely dodging, you might want to adopt something that puts you narrower towards your opponent, so they have less of a surface to hit, whilst also maintaining high mobility. Hawk shifted his stance slightly, and gestured for Izuku to copy. His left foot was further forward with his right foot almost in line, separated by only a few centimeters. His arms were held in a defensive boxing stance, protecting his head. Have your arms tight to your body, but also protective. This way, it's less to take care of, but also, if you can't dodge, you can block or counter. Hawks explained as Izuku as he struggled to mimic the position. It's really uncomfortable and tight, all my muscles are bunched, but it makes sense. Ready to explode in any direction to attack, counter, dodge, whatever it may be. Izuku thought, shaking slightly from the tenseness of the position he was in. Sensing Izuku's discomfort, Hawk spoke up. It might feel a little uncomfortable to begin with, and your muscles will feel tight. Eventually, as you get more used to that position, you'll start to loosen up, become more comfortable, and be capable of entering and leaving that position with ease. For now, hold that position for a few minutes, and I'll come back and we'll run through some basic dodging drills from that position. Hey Tokoyami. Need a hand with flight? Hawks finished, turning to the bird-headed boy who was currently at a stage of falling with style, rather than proper controlled flight. Focusing back on his current position, Izuku stood for a few minutes before taking a brief break to note down everything about the awkward position. the feeling, relative stance, etc. He spent some time going in and out of the position, getting used to moving into and out of the stance, figuring out the quickest way he could do that from a complete standstill, from various stances, shifting back from counters, etc. Whilst shifting back in and out of counters wasn't thorough as he was limited to his experience, and so it was mainly comprised of his limited knowledge of shadow boxing, and the experience from the abundant times he had sparred with his brother. By the time Hawks had come back to him, with Tokoyami in the background trying to get Dark Shadow to gently lift him into the air, Izuku had a decent grasp of the position, and was far less uncomfortable in it, although still uncomfortable. Alright, I'll launch the same volley of attacks, 12 feathers, and we'll see how you do this time. Hawks said, before almost immediately launching the feathers. Quickly taking up the stance, Izuku carefully watched the feathers. However, by the time he had made it into position, he didn't have a chance to plan, so he was relying purely on instinct and reflexes for the first two. Thankfully, with the new position, he was easily able to duck under both, and turned his attention to the remaining ones. Whilst his movements were stiff, he was able to dodge every feather this time. Good job, kid. Let's practice this for a little while and work on making your movements more fluid, then we'll look at implementing counters, before finishing up for tonight. Hawks congratulated Izuku, who was filled with pride at his sudden improvements. Together, Hawks helped Izuku work on dodging them one by one with barely a few milliseconds between each attack, improving his reflexes and instincts for times when he can't plan in time, developing on dodging several that are coming at the same time, and began implementing some simple counter kicks and punches. Whilst Izuku didn't power his quirk through Hawks when doing the counters, Hawks emphasized to actually make use of that power when it came to combat. And if he could learn to strike and release a charge of lightning in the brief moments that he made contact, he would become quite powerful. So, by the time the end of the day rolled around, both Tokoyami and Izuku were completely thrashed, Dark Shadow included. The two were sprawled on the couch in the lobby of Hawks' hero agency, as their host ordered pizza. They ate together. Unsurprisingly, Hawks got along quite well with the UA's students, considering he was not too old himself, closer to their age than he was in age to most other heroes. The two heroes in training were directed to their rooms by the receptionist, each with an attached bathroom, containing a shower, toilet and sink. Both showered, completing their nightly routines, before heading off to sleep. Tokoyami dozed easily, whereas Izuku was texting some friends on his phone as they were all on internship as well. AN for texting format. Also, I reckon Izuku would have everyone as their hero name in his phone. Because Izuku. And of course he would still stutter over the phone, because Izuku. Contact name. Text sent. Group chat. Internships woo. Nejire-chan. Hey Izuku. How's your first internship? Who did you go with? Are they fun? Is there anything else there with you? Midori Reiko. Hey Nejire. It's exhausting. I went with Hawks, he's pretty cool, and Tokoyami is with me, the boy who had the bird head. Did you change the group chat name again? Nejire-chan. Me. PFFT no, I would never do such a thing, how dare you accuse me of such blasphemy. Izuku chuckled to himself, somehow Nejire's over-the-top and energetic personality carried really well over the phone. Round 0. Shut the fuck up and go to sleep. Nejire-chan, Scusi Jr. Sun Eater. I don't think it's a good idea to aggravate Bakugo Nejire. Izuku let out a laugh once more. He had introduced his brother to the big three after school at some point, and he yelled at them that he would, quote, kick their fucking ass one day as an introduction after Bakugo learned that they were top of the school. They had all laughed nervously, and after exchanging numbers and establishing a group chat, they had went their separate ways. They had also extended an offer of sparring and training with the two at some point, to which Izuku happily agreed, and Bakugo did as well, with some choice words as well. Round 0. I don't give a fuck, just go to sleep and talk tomorrow for fuck's sake. Lemillion, whilst I don't approve of the use of language, Bakugo does have a good point. Midori Reiko, yeah, I should probably sleep though, my quirk is affected by my energy levels, and I'm doing speed training tomorrow, so I'll definitely need it. GN. With that, Izuku shut his phone off, leaving it to charge and crawled under the covers for the night. Izuku woke up, groggily and still shrouded by sleep. He rolled out of the bed and went into the en-suite, splashing water on his face, and doing his best to wake up quickly. He did not want to be woken up by whatever method Hawks thought was best. It would probably involve some incredibly spiky feathers and a very, very large bucket of ice water. Unfortunately for Tokoyami, he failed to wake up in time. And Izuku's theory was soon to be proved correct. Izuku and a mildly annoyed Tokoyami made their way to the lobby, where Hawks had already picked up a light breakfast for the two of them. So, Hawks started as the two ate the food. We're going to start with a brief patrol around the city, until we make it to a track. It isn't well kept at all, and the only reason it's still around is because I, along with several other heroes, use it as training grounds for speed. So we're doing speed today? Izuku asked. Precisely, kiddo. So that's why we're eating light, we don't want anyone throwing up. Now hurry up, you have 10 minutes to finish eating and be down in the lobby, or you'll need to catch up. Both Tokoyami and Izuku quickly finished eating and collected their hero costumes, and each went to their respective rooms in order to get changed. Each then quickly made their way down to the lobby where Hux was waiting for them. "Alright, 2 minutes to spare, good time, let's go," he said, leading the two out to the patrol. They were instructed to follow the same rules as yesterday, no engaging in combat unless it was to save a life. Quirks were free to use, so long as it was to either keep up, when specifically instructed to do so, or to save a life. The patrol was shorter, and there was no major event to note. Hawk stopped a few petty thieves, but neither boy arrived in time to help with any of those instances. By the time the patrol was over, Hawks was barely breaking a sweat, whilst the two UA interns were quickly running out of breath. Hawk slowed down, and led the two in the direction of the track, whilst giving a general lecture on how to interact with other people, namely excited fans and the public in general, something both Izuku and Tokoyami could definitely work on. Speaking of the two UA students, they were trying their best to regain some breath before completely losing it again, in whatever hellish training Hawks had devised for them. And hellish, it was. The two boys were both hunched over, and they had only finished the warm-up segment of the speed training. They had to complete 5 laps of the track, which was hard enough on its own. However, their motivation to maintain a certain pace was Hawk's feathers. And Hawk's feathers are fast. Like, stupid fast. In other words, both boys were exhausted, pricked in many different locations, and were only done with the warm-up. The warm-up. Hawks laughed nervously a little bit, whilst the two boys were recovering. "Okay. Well, to be quite honest, I am impressed that you were both able to make it all the way, although Tokoyami, your speed and stamina is markedly less than Izuku's. But that's okay. It's understandable considering the vast differences in your quirks, so you two will do different things from now on." Hawks finished, as the two boys started feeling far better. "Izuku, I want you to fully charge your quirk as you do currently, and run the lap as fast as you can," Hawks told the green-haired boy. Izuku, in response, nodded whilst slightly panicking. Hawks had become a great mentor over the past day, teaching Izuku so much in so little time, and Izuku wanted to be a student Hawks could be happy with. Hawks nodded towards the track as he noticed Izuku's signature green sparks begin taking off, and so Izuku made his way to the starting line of the racetrack. Feeling the lightning pulse through his muscles, Izuku braced himself as he listened to Hawks' countdown. 2, 1, go. With Hawks' call, Izuku started running, his quirk flowing through his muscles. He neared the first bend, taking the turn as smoothly as possible, thankfully not completely wiping out as he stumbled slightly. He felt a little lighter compared to how he normally felt when going full pace with his quirk, but still the slight heaviness, as per usual. As he neared the end of the track, he could feel the consistent stream of his quirk beginning to take its toll on his body. Like if he were talking without breathing, he could feel his presently stored energy running out, slowing steadily. See, the way his quirk meant was that he could charge high amounts of energy that was stored somewhere. No one was really sure where, it just was stored, but there was only so much that could be actively stored within his person. Effectively, like breathing, he could collect a certain amount of air and talk until that was almost out, at which point he would need to gather more air from the collection, or as normal people tend to call it, the atmosphere. But with green lightning. Anyway, he was running out of his presently stored amount, and he began slowing slightly, only slightly, but slowing nonetheless. Struggling to bring out more energy as he was powering himself and running, he pushed forward with the remaining amount, pulling the energy and launching forward. With the final surge of energy, he launched himself over the finishing line and took some time to relax as Hawks eyed him thoughtfully. After a few moments, Hawks started talking. "Well, that was pretty good. Although..." Hawks trailed off, gesturing towards the final stretch. "Looked like you started running out of energy. What's up with that?" "Well, I kinda did. Izuku started. I run using my quirk through my muscles, but I can only store so much at a given time, so I started running out." "Sorry. Kid, chill, you don't have to apologize, it's just something to work on." "So why only in your muscles?" "Well, I guess it just made sense, you run with muscles, right? But couldn't you go faster if you were completely one with the green lightning? Like, essentially become the green lightning?" "Well, I guess I never thought of that. I'll give it a shot." "Great kid, but first let's have a look at what Tokoyami can do," Hawk said, gesturing for the other UA student to take up his place on the starting block. Izuku blushed slightly, apologizing to his classmate who just shrugged it off. Izuku was writing in a specific notebook for his own quirk, where he started a new sections, a few pages away from his area disruption theory. "In theory, if I were to infuse a large percentage of my cells with the green lightning, then I might be able to effectively transform temporarily, or even be able to simply speed up the movement of each cell individually." Unbeknownst to Izuku, Tokoyami and Hawks were both listening to his incredibly complicated muttering spree. "This is a normal thing?" Hawks questioned the shadow sentient host. Tokoyami simply nodded, as the two allowed Izuku to continue his theorizing. Tokoyami had taken his place at the starting block, and after briefly instructing Dark Shadow, Hawks mentioned for the UA student to begin. Using Dark Shadow's powerful wings, Tokoyami had Dark Shadow propel them at incredible speeds, if less than gracefully. After Tokoyami finished the course, and briefly scolded Dark Shadow for not stopping safely, simply letting the momentum carry them forward, Hawks went over to the bird-headed boy to help him coordinate Dark Shadow's flight somewhat better, when Izuku had a breakthrough with his muttering, "Aha." Both Hawks and Tokoyami turned towards Izuku, who was now beat red, and spewing out a number of apologies when Hawks cut him off. "Kid, chill, please, for my sake if not your own. Rather than talking about what or how, just do it and show us yeah." Izuku frantically nodded in response, taking his spot on his starting line, and breathing in deeply. "Let it flow through not just my muscles, but my entire body. Bones, muscles, organs alike. Then, control myself not as a person, but as a lightning strike." As he thought the mantra, he became enshrouded by crackling green lightning, as though a tornado had formed carefully around him. What was interesting though, was that as time passed, the tornado of green lightning steadily merged with Izuku, and the UA student was completely glowing, with streaks of the green lightning flowing various sections of his limbs and face. Bracing himself in a runner's stance, he made sharp, slightly over-exaggerated movements, getting ready for Hawks to tell him to start. And with Hawk's signal, Izuku went off to a blazing start, lightning crackling and flashing off of him as he went, becoming a complete blur to the naked eye. If it weren't for Hawk's experience at high speed, he would not be capable of making out the movements Izuku was making. Even then it was incredibly difficult to do so. The UA student had sped up dramatically, almost moving twice as fast. Although there were plenty of kinks that would need to be ironed out, with the student's movements being over-exaggerated and sharp. Nearly overshooting several bends, but each time only barely regaining his footing and staying on track. In nearly half the time it took for Izuku the first time, the UA student had finished the track with his improved quirk usage. Impressive, kid. Keep going round the track like that, and practice the bends in particular. You're going almost twice the speed you were before and well on the way to more. Hawks told him. Izuku nodded, any sweat dripping off of him immediately evaporating from the extreme heat and friction from the lightning. "I'll have to get that updated once we get back to school. Need a more breathable suit, and maybe a cooler of some sort to help those I might accidentally hurt or regulate my own body temperature. Maybe Todoroki might have something on his suit that I could effectively steal." Izuku thought, dousing himself with a few bottles of water. Whilst Izuku was practicing with the bends, Tokoyami was practicing similar control whilst using extreme power to propel him. It was mildly amusing to listen to Dark Shadow's whining, as Tokoyami lectured the Senshin quirk for various dangerous stunts he kept trying out. Meanwhile, Bakugo was currently having his ass kicked for yelling at more children. He was also learning there were more muscles that could be sore than he realized. Probably also a side effect of getting his ass handed to him so many times. "How many times do we have to tell you?" Estinus asked Bakugo, standing intimidatingly over the UA intern. "Stop yelling at children. Why is this so hard to comprehend? The little brats are fuck." Bakugo replied. "Stop swearing." Whatever, the little brats were weak for being scared by a slight shout. Estinus just sighed. The next generation was strong, in more than one way. For better or for worse, that was yet to be seen. Regardless, he had high hopes for them. "Now come on, fight me again you fuckers so I can beat your ass." If they could maybe work on their attitudes somewhat. For now, he would beat the future into submission and understanding regarding manners and etiquette. "Fine. I hope you're ready to listen afterwards." Needless to say, Bakugo neither beat Best Jean's ass, nor did he listen to any of the lectures afterwards. Izuku and Tokoyami stumbled back to Hawk's agency building, their calves completely thrashed from the non-stop racing they had to do. They had to race each other, race Hawk's feathers, even race Hawks himself more than once. They did not win once. Although Izuku came closest of the two interns. He was only 15 seconds behind Hawks. Hawks meanwhile, was having some ice cream as he casually flew down the street, the odd loop-the-loop as he waited for the two students to catch up. "You two were pretty good today, but if you're already exhausted you're gonna struggle to be heroes." Hawks called out to the heroes in training. The two seemed to pep up after this, forcing themselves through the soreness and speeding up to catch up with the pro hero. "That's the spirit. Now come on, let's pick up a light lunch somewhere to eat back at the agency. Let's go." The two UA students each had some form of a meal picked up from somewhere, and both were fairly hungry, but didn't feel like throwing up during whatever training Hawks had planned for the pair. Incidentally, the training happened to be strength training that involved a variety of strength from quirks, and raw strength that made both of them so sore it no longer hurt, and they felt like they were walking in honey by the end of it. After several days with a mix of speed, reflex and strength training, both boys would comfortably say they've improved drastically in all areas, whether or not their quirks were active. On this fateful day, Hawks informed the UA students that they would be traveling to a different prefecture to patrol for the night, as to immerse them in a completely new environment, whilst still tending to civilians. Hawks' rules for quirk usage was standard, except this time they would not be all sticking together. As such, they each had an earpiece, and if someone was to engage in a combat situation involving, they would need to immediately inform the others and disengage or defuse the situation, unless someone else's life was at stake. Regardless, they were meant to arrive in their location come next morning, taking an overnight train through Hosu. Izuku was lost in thought as the trio boarded the train, when Tokoyami spoke up. Iida is interning with someone here, isn't he? The normal hero or something like that. Yeah, I believe it was with Manuel. Izuku replied, a finger on his chin as he racked his memory. I hope he's alright considering the hero killer. Stain is currently active in the area. Oh yes, Stain. Totally forgot about that guy. Hawks interjected, maybe we just get off here and go hun. Hawks' joke proposal was suddenly cut off as a large creature came crashing through the side of the train. The trio began moving on instinct. Hawks moved to minimize the creature's damage and try and defeat it, whilst the students moved to evacuate and protect civilians. Well, guess we're getting off here then. Hawks joked as he sliced the creature enough to make it sufficiently incapacitated. The two UA students had finished helping civilians and came to stand with their mentor, overlooking the city on flames. Alright, plan and rules stay the same, except we're getting off here. So split up, keep an eye on your location if you need help and get all the experience you can. Good luck Tsukuyomi and Midori Reiko. Remember, speed is key. Let's go. With those parting words, the trio dived out of the train, landing seamlessly as though they hadn't just jumped from the height of a 3-story building. Hawks went directly towards the source flames, whilst the two students split off in different directions, skirting the edges and assisting with evacuation efforts. But with the cover of the chaos. Now would be a perfect time for Izuku's eyes widen with realization, as he let his lightning fully envelop his figure. Stain normally strikes in alleyways, and considering the sharpness of my movements, I can bounce through alleys until I find them. Please stay safe, Iida. After bouncing from building to building, scanning each alleyway as he went, he finally saw Stain, and Izuku propelled himself off the building faster than he had ever moved before. My name is Ingenium. Ingenium cried out indignantly, despite the fact that his helmet had been knocked off with nothing more than a flick of the hero killer's sword. Ingenium? I thought I already dealt with that fake hero. Stain replied plainly, eyes narrowing at the student before him. A student. This isn't a good time to be playing hero, and I personally don't like killing kids. Now scraw. Fake hero? Ingenium replied, tears welling up in his eyes. Ingenium was a wonderful, well-respected hero, and a most excellent brother. Stain did not reply as the student continued their emotional release. As such, he has asked me to inherit his name, and so I will arrest you in his place. Remember the name of Ingenium, as it will be the name of the hero who defeats you. Stain did not immediately reply, instead opting to gesture to Native, currently bleeding from a shoulder wound. If you were a true hero, you would have saved them, rather than focusing on your pathetic little plan for vengeance. He spoke. The students seemed to only just realize if the widening of their eyes was any indication. However, rather than continuing the war with words, they charged up their quirk, engines based in their legs, and took a large kick. Moving in a single fluid motion, he knocked the student to the ground and cut them with one of many blades. Licking the blood, he sighed. If you are the future, we are done for. Stain stood over the top of the downed student, blade in hand as he aimed for where the student's heart should be. As much as it pained him to do this, which it didn't in any way whatsoever, he would have to rid the world of this fake hero. Now die. What Stain wasn't expecting was for a little green blur of lightning to come along and completely annihilate the sword. Izuku had propelled himself to Stain, moving at an unprecedented speed, and Iida was incredibly relieved that he wasn't going to die today, as he noticed himself being pulled further down the alley, and a confused Stain holding the handle of his blade. Another kid. This isn't a daycare. Stain remarked, before pulling out another set of blade. Can you move? Izuku asked Iida, who was still laid on the ground. No, it's part of his quirk, don't let him cut you. There's someone else near him, a pro hero I believe. Iida replied. Do you know the current address? I can figure it out. Great, speak it into this and explain the situation. Izuku said, handing Iida a small earpiece. Iida grunted and began to list out the information, explaining the situation, and hoping that help would be here soon. Meanwhile, Izuku stood, narrowing his eyes at his opponent. Stain. From the few reports, the villain fought based on a skewed justice system, with an abundance of blades and extreme speed. Looking at Stain's shoes and various armaments, that was more than apparent. Right now though, Izuku had to try and get the other pro out of danger. Bracing himself, he let the green lightning envelop him as he grabbed the hero, and pulled them out of danger with Iida, before Stain could react. The alley is too long to be able to drag one out, and then the other before the hero killer notices, and trying to carry both out with the wounds they have would be disastrous, and Stain would easily catch up. Well, here goes nothing. Izuku placed the two almost victims of Stain's rampage behind him, and glided smoothly into the dodging stance. Hawks was right, this does get easier, but now is not the time for that. Glaring at the hero killer, he spoke a simple demand. I will not let you kill either of them. If you want to do that, then you'll have to go through me. Ha! I like you, kid. You have a bit of spunk. But unfortunately, I'm gonna have to kill them, whether or not you like it. Stain replied, gripping a pair of knives in one hand and a longer blade in another. Izuku didn't reply, instead opting to steel himself and move some more charge in his hands. If there are any blade, I'll want to destroy them so he can't reuse them, and ideally if I can lay a hand on him, I can shock him into submission, or at least stun him long enough. There's not enough time where I can stand still and guide any lightning through the ground, so for now I'll have to do this. He'll probably start by throwing the 2 knives, and following up with a slice with the longer blade. Izuku's theory regarding how the hero killer would start turned out to be correct. 2 knives thrown in quick succession, both of which Izuku was able to dodge with little effort. He wasn't able to catch them, but they simply flew past, further down the alley to the point where it wouldn't be practical for Stain to want to go and collect them. Eyeing the blade, Izuku waited for Stain to rush him as he further steeled his nerves. In a blur of red, Stain rushed towards Izuku with his blade outstretched, and Izuku jumped back slightly as he waited for Stain to complete the follow-through. As soon as he did, Izuku reached out with one hand and quickly grabbed the blade, destroying the blade and briefly shocking Stain. Instinctively, Stain recoiled and looked at the now destroyed blade with confusion, before jumping further back into the alley. Izuku had managed to slightly graze his hand, and a small amount of blood steadily dripped out. Thankfully it wasn't enough to hold him back in any way. It wasn't the cut. But what was it then? Looking back to Iida and Native, he was trying to figure out the common factor when it hit him. Blood. Something about the blood. Any similar paralyzation quirks require some form of contact. And if he's so obsessed with blood, then it's something to do with him touching or ingesting blood. Izuku thought, glaring at Stain whilst in the dodging stance. The look on your face, you figured it out, haven't you? Stain spoke, meeting Izuku's glare with a bemused smile. I'll finish off the thought for you. My quirk lets me paralyze an individual temporarily after ingesting their blood. He finished, showing off a grotesque tongue in the process. It doesn't change what I need to do, Izuku thought, dodging another pair of knives. I need to stall until some backup arrives. I doubt the hero killer will keep fighting if there's several heroes. You're tenacious. I like you. Stain said, pulling out 2 more blades. But, you must be put down, like the rest of these stupid fakes. Izuku, you should leave. Save your own life. Iida called out as Izuku braced himself to avoid Stain's next strikes. No? I'm not leaving you here to die. Izuku responded, simultaneously zipping over to Stain and destroyed one of the blades before zipping back, moving so fast he was nothing but a blur of green to those around him. It's not worth your life to save mine. Iida replied, tearing up. So? That's a hero's job. Izuku replied, dodging the other blade by the bare minimum, to save those that need saving, no matter the price. Jumping back, Izuku took advantage of Stain needing to pull out yet another pair of blades, to look at Iida directly. And least of all am I going to leave my friend to die. So come on, we're going to live together. Iida's eyes were brimming with tears as he watched his green-haired friend dodge a pair of knives. He gritted his teeth tighter as he remembered how he got into the situation. Izuku was hit by a flying spike kick from Stain straight into his shoulder. Reacting quickly, he was able to shock Stain substantially, causing the villain to hunch over as Izuku gripped his shoulder. At least he wouldn't be able to get any blood from that, but that's going to be troublesome when it comes to dodging. Trying to move the shoulder, he found that it was incredibly sore and slightly sharp to move, but he could still move his arm and hand with no trouble. At least I still have that going for me. Izuku braced himself, placing that shoulder behind him as he braced to dodge again, with Stain trying to stand back up, but still feeling some of the after effects of being zapped. I thought there was no hope for the future generation, but you HM. Well then, young hero, let us test your mettle. Stain rasped, licking his lips as he pulled out 4 blades instead of 2. Izuku upped his charge, feeling the slight tingling in his muscles building up. I can't hold this up charge for long, but Stain has started to take this seriously. I'll just have to ignore the numbness to be able to hold off. Clenching his fists, he would have to more proactively counterattack, rather than reserve energy and exclusively stay on the defensive. Hopefully he could hold out against the well-trained villain. Well, time to get experience the hard way. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.